good, y'all? So in this video, I'm going to be reacting to Mr. Ballen top 3 strange but true horrifying moments. A viewer actually requested this to me. If y'all have things y'all want me to watch, just comment it and I will get to it, promise. But because of the length of the video and sometimes the issues I have with the process I'm doing right now for reacting and the fact that I have some things to do, I'm going to do this video in 3 parts. It's lame, but like it just is what it is, you feel me? So right now I'm going to do this first story that he's doing, and then for the next 2 days I might combine those into one video actually and just upload it like that. It just takes long and I have work. It's okay. But anyways, let's get into it.
If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So
And I have watched D Chanel react to him, and I really fuck with the way he tells stories. He's very thorough, and it's always interesting, you know? Like sometimes I feel like, oh, like I wouldn't listen to somebody else talk.
that's of interest to you, please move in next door to the like button and then buy a small dog with emphysema who barks 24/7 and
like
leave
5
it
seconds before I
outside
skip.
every night. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all
Great.
notifications
Y'all do
so you
that,
don't miss
'cause
any
he
of our
really is
weekly
dope.
uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. One morning in early June of 2011, in the Russian city of Kazan, a 49-year-old Russian woman named Fagiliu Mukametsanov woke up feeling nauseous. Fagiliu had recently had some health problems, and her doctors had told her that she really needed to take it easy, don't do anything that really stressed her out or made her mad, basically just relax. And so, on that morning, this is exactly what Fagiliu decided to do. Instead of pushing through her nausea to go to work anyways that day, she decided she would call out from work and stay home and have some tea and try to just feel better. But a little while later, when Fagiliu was in the kitchen making tea, her husband, Fagili, he came in and asked her how she was doing, and she said, you know what, I actually feel worse. My nausea has gotten worse, my chest hurts, and I'm starting to sweat. I'm gonna go lie down in the bedroom. But as Fagiliu walked across the kitchen to go lay down, her chest suddenly tightened tenfold and she collapsed to the ground unconscious. Fagili rushed over to her and tried to wake her up, and when he couldn't, he rushed to the phone and dialed 112, which is Russia's emergency line, and he called for an ambulance. And then when the ambulance arrived, Fagiliu was not breathing, and by the time they got her to the hospital, she was declared dead. She had died from a heart attack. Fagili, who had been married to Fagiliu, his wife, for almost 30 years, was absolutely heartbroken, but he and his wife's religion encouraged people to have funerals within 24 hours of a loved one passing away. And so despite the fact that Fagili was basically despondent from all his grief, he pretty much immediately began calling relatives and friends and making preparations for Fagiliu's funeral, which would take place the next day. The next morning, Fagili woke up and put on his best suit.
I got confused. He still fit, like the woman woke up. I got confused.
Joined his and his wife's family and friends at the funeral home for Fagiliu's funeral. When Fagili walked inside of the funeral home, he saw there were all these wooden chairs facing forward towards the front of the room, and at the front of the room, up on a table, was his wife's coffin, which was open and surrounded by all the flowers that Fagili had barely been able to buy with the little bit of money that he and his wife had. Fagili slowly made his way down the middle of the room to his wife's coffin, and the other people that were there saw him coming and got out of the way in respect to, the husband of the deceased. And so Fagili, he walks up and he looks down at his wife, who again, it's open casket so we can see her, and he was struck by her appearance. She just did not look right. Now, Fagili did not have enough money to embalm his wife, which means to preserve a dead body and make it look like it's very lifelike. And so instead, the people who worked...
I'm sorry that I'm like acting like he's talking to me, and I keep... Sorry.
In this funeral home had just applied heavy makeup to Fagiliu's face to try to make her appear more lifelike, but it really hadn't worked. To Fagili, it didn't even look like his wife. After all,
That's
Fagiliu never
that's
even wore
tough.
makeup, and so to see her with heavy eyeliner and bright red lipstick was just totally bizarre. Behind Fagili was Fagili's family and Fagiliu's relatives all assembled in the first row, and they were beginning their prayers for the dead. And so Fagili, he took a few more looks at his wife, and then he stepped back and joined the first row. And so as Fagili was standing there holding his mother's and brother's hand, he closed his eyes and did his best to focus on the words of the prayer instead of on the grief he was feeling for his wife. And as he was doing that, his mother, who was on his right side, suddenly broke from the words of the prayer and let out this strange crying sound. And Fagili, he opened his eyes and looked over at his mother, expecting her to be collapsed on the ground from all the grief she was experiencing. But instead, he saw his mother was trembling and looking straight ahead. And so Fagili followed her gaze, and what he saw at the front of the room made Fagili want to faint.
She was alive.
His wife, Fagiliu, was now sitting straight up in her coffin. She wasn't making a sound, but she was looking out at the crowd of people with her strange makeup on her face, just staring at them with wide eyes. And for a second, everybody in the funeral home noticed this and went totally quiet, and both Fagiliu and the mourners just stared at each other. And then Fagiliu began screaming, but at first it was like she couldn't make any sound, and it was this raspy, dry yell that was coming out of her mouth. But then it built and built until it was sort of like a bellow or a roar. And when this loud, deep, guttural sound began coming out of Fagiliu's mouth, the mourners in the room began screaming too. And suddenly it was absolute.
If I go to a funeral and the body lifts up, it starts talking, gets out, jumps out, starts doing jumping jacks, something. If I see a twitch, I'm out. So, I'm sorry. If it ain't immediate family, I'm out. I don't care. I don't care. We've reached the second coronavirus. But instead, it's on some Walking Dead, Last of Us type shit. You feel what I'm saying, bro? And I don't got time to stick around and see what's going on so I can turn into one of them things. I'm going to be gone.
Chaos inside of this building. As funeral workers rushed to call emergency services, not knowing what else to do, Fagili, who also had been screaming after seeing his wife arise from the
I
dead.
feel like she just, when it's like, I mean, that doesn't make sense. When you're like dead, but then you come back to life. But I thought that was like pretty instant. You know what I'm saying? Like you're dead for like 10 minutes or something.
He kind of snapped out of it and ran to his wife, and he embraced her. And when he did, Fagiliu went from screaming to silent. And she looked up at her husband with wide, scared eyes and began crying. And then she slumped forward into Fagili's arms. At this point, Fagili's family and Fagiliu's family saw what was happening, and they kind of snapped out of it too. And they rushed forward, and they helped Fagili lift Fagiliu out of her coffin, and they laid her down on the ground. And even though she wasn't moving, her eyes were open, and she was looking up at her family, just absolutely terrified, with all her makeup running from her tears. And then 12 minutes later, when Fagiliu finally was rushed to the hospital, she was declared dead again.
Oh my God.
It would turn out that when Fagiliu collapsed on her kitchen floor, she really did have a heart attack, but it didn't kill her. She was just unconscious, and her breathing was very shallow, and she wasn't moving, and nobody noticed. And so when Fagiliu kind of came to and woke up inside of her coffin at her funeral, she likely was okay, all things considered. She was, healthy enough to be alive. But when she looked around the room and saw she was at her own funeral and sitting in her coffin, the stress of that moment had given her another heart attack. And this one had been fatal. Today's video is sponsored by Nord.
No. So I see what type of time we on. And that was number 3. I don't know if they get progressively more shocking or what. But that shit was crazy. That shit was crazy. And heartbreaking. He need to sue them people. They didn't do right because they might have been able to save her life if they, I don't know. That made me feel like, I don't know, goosebumps. But Now I'm really excited to do the rest of this video for real. He really is a good storyteller. But anyways, y'all like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. I'll see y'all in the next one.